Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. We've got some malicious compliance stories, and our first story of the day is by Draconian1429, Bathroom Policy? Nah. So I was around 8 or 9 years old in a class of about 30 other kids the same age. I'd like to think we were good kids, but there's only so good a group of bored children can be. We had some amazing teachers who were always great about us using the bathroom in class if we needed to. Except Mrs. Karen. Mrs. Karen was around 60 and was the sort of person who hated children and scolded you if you sneezed while she was talking. She also hated bathroom breaks. Our school was set up with a weird timetable, where we ended up having 3 hours of classes in a row. For an 8-year-old, that's almost impossible. And Mrs. Karen would never entertain the idea of someone taking a 2-minute trip to the bathroom in her oh-so-important classes. If someone had an accident from trying to hold it in, she'd openly mock them in front of the class and make them answer questions on the board so people could see that they had an accident. There were a good few of us who were unhappy about this, but what could a kid do? Mrs. Karen always denied any wrongdoing, most parents were on her side, and we all ended up being miserable. Until an amazing kid stepped up to the challenge. We'll call him Kevin. Kevin was the class clown, never did what teacher said. If he was told he couldn't leave class, he'd leave anyway. So when the day came that he was told he couldn't go to the bathroom and listened, we all thought the apocalypse had started. This was absolutely unheard of, and everyone was wondering what he was planning. 10 minutes later, he puts his hand up and tells Mrs. Karen that since he wasn't allowed out of the classroom to go to the bathroom, he'd gone in class. He held up a water bottle that definitely didn't have water in it, and everything went to heck. He got sent to the office, but he never actually went to the office, just walked around the school until lunch. At lunch, he tells everyone that this is what his big brother had told him to do. All the boys agreed to do the same, but there was an obvious problem for the girls. That's where quiet little me piped up. Mrs. Karen had been angry with Kevin because he went in a bottle, so why not just skip the bottle? Most people refused to take part, but 5 of us started the campaign. When we needed the bathroom, we would ask Miss Karen if we could go, and when she refused, we would go in our seats and tell her, "Since I am not allowed to go to the bathroom, I have gone in my seat." We were getting sent to the office every day, just the 5 of us. Because we got to go to the office, say we'd had an accident and stay in the nurse's office until the parent brought us new clothes, or were taken home because we didn't have a spare uniform, we basically got half the day off. More kids started joining in, until around 20 kids were doing this. I, finding I quite liked causing problems for Mrs. Karen, started leading everyone to the water fountain at break before her lesson so everyone could fill their water bottles and drink as much as they could before class started. Mrs. Karen refused to back down, but our salvation came from elsewhere. The cleaners got tired of having to constantly clean the chairs and sometimes floors, and told Mrs. Karen that they would no longer clean it up if we weren't allowed to go to the bathroom. Parents were complaining left, right, and center since so many of their precious angels were ruining their clothes. Finally, inspection day came around. Kevin, being the malicious genius that only an 8-year-old could be, asked to use the bathroom. Mrs. Karen refused. Kevin, in front of an inspector, then put his hand up and said he had to go to the office to get new clothes. After that day, we were allowed to use the bathroom whenever we wanted, and a few months later, Mrs. Karen announced she was retiring, most probably by force. When I was checking some of the details with my parents, they told me that on Mrs. Karen's last day, Kevin took in a bottle of drink for her to apologize, but hadn't forgotten to use it first. I would think most of you guys would agree with me that this teacher probably should have been let go way earlier when they don't let kids go to the bathroom, right? I understand being upset when kids fake it just to get some time out of class, but you really need to let these kids go to the bathroom when they need to go to the bathroom. So that said, do you think this teacher should have been fired or heavily reprimanded earlier? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Scoochie McNugget. Giggle during a baptism? Get out? Don't mind if I do. I was not raised in a religious family, nor was I exposed much to many religious people growing up. This all changed when I became friends with John, not his real name, who was a Mormon. The first I've ever met, as a matter of fact. He didn't seem to take much interest in the church like his mother, who was 100% all in and a bit of a Karen. I knew nothing of Mormonism, and being dumb as a kid, I never really cared to ask. Fast forward a year into being friends, and I'm spending the afternoon at his house, riding bikes and jumping on the trampoline, when his mom comes up in her normal spasmodic self, telling us we must follow her over to the church, we can't be left alone, and it's John's brother's baptisms. Cool, it didn't really matter. The church was 2 blocks from their house, so we raced her stupid minivan on our bikes and beat her. Score! We threw our bikes in the shrubs and are led into the church. It didn't seem odd and smelled very nice. John and I both got excited over the prospect of food. We are shown into another room with a TV wheelie cart that you would see in middle school in the 90s with a box TV and a VCR underneath. We both took seats, trained like seals to enjoy the chance to watch a movie from public school. Looking around, I noticed a little pool area at the far area of the room, but thought nothing of it. Enter some guys in suits. John's mom with a big beaming smile on her face and a few other people. I was pretty distracted at this point, but the guy basically said we would watch some movie, then the ceremony would happen, and then snacks. The lights went down and they turned the TV on and started the tape. The screen flashed from the 03 blue screen to a desert scene. It was bright orange with a bright blue sky behind it, like you would see on old westerns, even with music that wasn't full-blown cowboy ditty but was rustic and fit the scene perfectly. Unlike westerns though, about 20 seconds when the cowboy would normally be walking up from the wavy heat ray distance, it was none other than Jesus H. Christ just strolling on across the screen. John and I darn near died laughing. We are doubling over laughing, we just couldn't stop. I tried to divert my eyes, but it was entirely too much to handle, and if I watched the screen for a second, it would be entirely new fits of laughs. John's mom went cherry red, trying her best from going totally ballistic, telling us to get out of the room while dragging us out. We giggle as we get out of the room, the show still going as the doors closed. Wild West Jesus still at it. We are now laughing in the hall to ourselves, reminding each other of how funny it was. I guess we were loud because we were told to get out of the church and go ride bikes. We wouldn't be asked to come back in. Fine and dandy. We spent the next hour or so biking like we normally would be anyways. The baptism goes off without any issues and they act like we were just horrible. Fast forward 1 week, I go over to John's house to play and his brothers both have their heads shaved. I ask what's going on with haircuts, and he tells me everybody at the baptism, including his mom, the minister guys, and all the kids caught head lice. We were lucky enough to not catch it since we were forced to go outside. I'm not a religious man, but that day I felt like something was watching out for us. All I can really say about this story is that is a very unique story to tell. The head lice, the Mormons, the Wild West Jesus. Not too many people are going to be able to tell a story quite like that one. Our next story is by dedower. Boss said I couldn't switch shifts to go to court sessions because of my contract. I complied. When I was in the last couple years of college, law school, not in the USA, I got a part-time internship in the state attorney's office in my town. I had an immediate boss who was as close as possible to a friend. He always complimented my work and taught me a lot, but his superior, the attorney chief, it's hard to translate these job names, I'll just call him chief from now on, was another case. He was a methodical guy who liked to boss people around just for the sake of being a pain in the butt. There were other interns my age and even younger ones from high schools, part of a program from the government. The younger high school interns would do activities such as printing, copying, and, the most annoying, accompanying the office's clerk to the courthouse in order to carry all the tax enforcement papers in a cart. This will be important later. The attorneys often came in late or went out early for court appointments, so I would be left working alone in my room for most of the afternoon, writing tax enforcement procedures. I had class at night and worked in the afternoon. Eventually, I had to switch my shift around so I could watch court sessions as a requirement to graduate. The court sessions were always in the afternoon. It would only take a few weeks of rearranging my shift whenever there was a court session. I would come into work on that Monday morning, then Tuesday afternoon if there were no sessions on that day, and so on. That's when trouble started. I was a good intern, I helped my immediate boss out a lot, never got behind on deadlines, but there was no way that chief could ignore an intern coming in on Monday morning and then on Tuesday afternoon. No. Just one more thing you should know. Around that time, all the high school interns suddenly left. So I and 2 other law school interns would take turns accompanying the clerk to the courthouse, carrying that cart all around like a high school kid normally would. It wasn't pleasing, but we complied. Then one day came Chief into my room while my boss was out. "OP," he said, "this switching shifts around cannot go on, it's becoming messy. I need you to only come in on the afternoon, as your internship contract says." I tried explaining to him that I was almost done with the court sessions, that I had to be there in order to graduate law school, that there were no sessions in the morning, but he was relentless. Later that day, the clerk came knocking on my room. "OP, will you come with me to the courthouse?" She asked nicely. She was a good person. But it wasn't my turn to go. I told her that, and she said that Chief had discharged the new intern from going, so I had to go that day again. The mention of his name made my blood boil, and I immediately replied, "I will not go. Chief wants me to stand by my internship contract, and there is no accompanying the clerk to the courthouse under the activity section in my contract." She gulped nervously and said, "I agree with you, but he will not like this." My friend who worked in the next room was standing by the door and heard the whole thing. I remember the satisfaction I felt when she said, "You were so brave, but you're in trouble." But I had made up my mind. I would quit the internship, but I would rub it in his face, so I refused to go. When my immediate boss heard about what had happened, he told me to apologize to Chief. Chief couldn't just fire me because he knew I was right, so he tried to embarrass me into apologizing. I refused to do that and decided to quit my internship anyway. If I continued seeing that man's face every day, I would probably end up punching it. So I quit. Never talked to any of them again. I still shake with anger remembering this episode and Chief's condescending face, but I think answering like that was one of my brightest moments. Really, it just goes to show you that if you treat anybody that works underneath you badly, very often you might end up finding yourself with just one employee or no employees left, like Chief did when OP left and they only had one intern left. This next story is by Hammer Unto Dawn. Not gonna pay me the wages I deserve? Game on. This story takes place during the 80s. Gramps was a journeyman in the sheet metal trade. For this build, they required a city's licensure to finish the build, and Gramps was selected to test for this. He tested around 4 times and intentionally failed each time, knowing he wouldn't get the pay for a foreman's wages. Finally, the testing coach approached him. The testing coach said, "You've been in here several times and have failed each time. Is there something wrong?" Gramps said, "My contractor wants this license, but won't pay me the wages associated." Testing coach calling the company, "You get someone down here that can pass this test or you won't get this license." Heading back to the office, Big Boss wants to speak to Gramps. "Gramps, why aren't you passing this test?" His reply was simple. "You won't pay me foreman's wages, so I don't see the incentive to get this licensure. Heck, I'm not even making full journeyman's wages." "Well, I can't afford to pay you foreman's pay." "Well, then you can't afford to get the licensure either." "Is this really all that this is about? Money?" "Heck yes it is." Boss acquiesced after this, perhaps seeing the hypocrisy in his statement, or perhaps choosing not to fight this battle. Gramps finally got the licensure after this and received about a week of foreman wages before he was moved to a school gig. With this build, his ranking was back down to a journeyman position. First paycheck rolls around and he noticed he was getting shorted on his check. Confronting the site foreman about this, it was confirmed that this was no slight error. So, figuring that it wasn't worth the gas money, he said that I wasn't going back the next day and called the general contractor. General contractor said, "Okay, well, come back tomorrow and I'll have a check for your back pay." Gramps said, "That sounds fair, but if you do, I'm owed a full 8 hours of work." Contractor said, "That's not necessary." Gramps said, "Read the union contract. It states that any work-related activity needs to be met with a full day's pay." Gramps was able to twist contractor's arm to both get the pay and to get a full day's wages out of him. Seems like a win-win for him. It never hurts to read the contract. You might find some loopholes or some stipulations in there that might surprise you how well they could work for you. Gramps was smart here and knew exactly what the contract outlined. And our final story of the day is by qazxsw Disappointed Face. "Can't go to the bathroom and stay in my seat? No problemo, teach." Back when I was in primary school, elementary for all the Americans, I asked to go to the toilet. Now, my previous teacher had just broken her leg and elbow while pinning something on a notice board on the classroom wall. She was small and needed a stepladder, and we had a new sub-teacher in. The new teacher was really strict. Like, "Obey my commands, you filthy children," kind of strict. So I asked to go to the bathroom. Not a chance. She flipped out, saying I should have gone at break or lunch. Recess. Class time is learning time. I couldn't go and I had to stay in my chair. So I did what any rational 8-year-old would. I did what I was told. Slid out the door on my chair. The screeches of the chair legs as I shuffled across the room, coupled by her newly stunned look, made for a good laugh looking back now. She ended up in conniptions of rage, but I was reveling in the cheers of my classmates for the first time in my introverted life. Hope you enjoyed my childhood anecdote. That's a really good form of malicious compliance. Taking the words super literally and, in all technicality, not being wrong. Good on an 8-year-old for coming up with that idea. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which one and why in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe if you haven't, and turn on notifications so you'll never miss an upcoming video from the Storytime channel. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, so no matter what you did, thank you for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time right here.